Welcome, Karl. Thank you very much for joining us today.
My
Today
pleasure.
we are at the OPN Ask an Angel, and where we interview and get to learn what investors are looking for to help early stage founders figure out how they can better improve their approach to investors. And Karl, I think that we've had many conversations over the last year that you've been back in Toronto and working with G10 and the group, and of course a couple conversations prior to this. And one thing I found is that we're very similar on so many elements of how we look at startups and how we want to help them and how we help them focus on being investor ready versus where everybody else is kind of taking this different approach, is where I'm trying to make you business ready and I feel that you're ready for investing, but I really don't know that approach because I'm not an investor. But before we dive into all of that, I'd love to kind of take a step back and maybe you can give a little bit of a background and introduction to kind of where you've come from, a little bit about your background, and then where you are today. And then there's one question: is one thing about you that nobody would know?
All right. Great. Well, I'm the child of immigrant parents. My heritage is important to me. Both my father and mother themselves had a very entrepreneurial journey in the Netherlands, where I was born, and continued on in Canada. They in turn came from very entrepreneurial grandparents on both sides. So aunts and uncles, everybody was in business or had a business or was in business for themselves, or were in business with other members of the family. And that was just kind of growing up like that as kids, you didn't really, you heard about people whose parents worked for other people, and you finally got to meet some when you went to school, and you thought, oh, that's interesting. You work for someone else, okay. And so, but it's just in our DNA to be entrepreneurial. But of course, as growing up in that environment, I also saw the high and low of that. So I kind of swore that off. I thought, that's not the life for me. That is way too risky. There's way too much up and down in the family and what have you. So for the first 20 years of my life, I pursued a corporate path. But I was always extremely what I coined as entrepreneurial. So working within corporate environment, and always being first at trying something or being innovative and being creative. Finding products that weren't selling and then figuring out how to sell them and create markets for them. Or a disruptive way of doing something, which most of the organization hates change, embraced that change and ended up at a very young and early age with a tremendous amount of responsibility. But in my early 20s, I was running a sales had about a team of 48 people in a corporate environment. Had very quickly been recognized as sort of a it was what came to me, just the way it was in that organization. Stayed there for some time. Invariably in the early 90s, had again good opportunity to be attracted to very entrepreneurial corporate environments, and again whether it was a new startup in a corporate environment or a new business unit within a corporate environment, or also if they had business units that weren't doing well or weren't performing well. And most, being young at the time, most of the senior guys would never want to take on a underperforming business because it's got great political risk to them. As a young guy, I mean, if I fail, that's what people expected me to do. But if you're a young guy and you take on what looks like it can be failure, and then you don't fail, you earn your street cred pretty quickly. So now looking at that past, it all makes sense to me. But at the time, it was a very fun time. But and also seeing that a lot of almost here's my value prop to. When people ask me about me, I go, well, every boss I've ever worked for is 7 or 8 figures richer after having me work for them. I said, that's the value prop. But at some point you say, well, maybe I should do that for myself as well. So we started to look for opportunities to be more entrepreneurial and get a piece of the action. And that's kind of led me further in life to ultimately, start to embrace the DNA that I'd been fighting and to be entrepreneurial. My last venture was a business based out of Vancouver. It was about a $4 million business. The owners had held it for about 10 years. They bought it. It was a $4 million business. 10 years later, it was a $4 million business. They asked me to come in. At that time, I'd come off of running the European subsidiaries for a public company in Europe that I turned around. And prior to that, I had a role on Bay Street at another company. So I'd run, 200 people sized companies inside these companies. And these guys came to me with, would you like to do this? And this was a $4 million business. And they hadn't done anything that small, like till like in my early 20s. But I thought, well, here's the personal challenge, Karl. Can you create something out of nothing with nothing? Can you take a business that's got no resources, it's got no brand, it's got no awareness, and can you do something with that? So that was more of a personal challenge for me. And I was very, very fortunate to attract an amazing team around me of people initially who believed my vision. Because when you're an entrepreneur, that's probably one of the biggest things is convincing other people to believe in your vision more as much as you do. So I was able to attract and retain some amazing people, and by 2017 we exited that business. We had grown that business to 225 million, and really changed the way consumer lending is done in Canada today. When we started, it was very much a fill out paper forms. Human people decide the credit. Fill out paper forms, hand in paper forms, sign paper forms. And when we left, we ran that whole business. We did about $10 million a month via mobile device, fully digital, fully, artificial, full with algorithms that adjudicated the contract signing. The whole process was digital. So that was around 17, and then so it wasn't long before I was approached by other people. What are you going to do next? What are you going to do now? And so I started hearing about this angel investing thing as a word. I didn't know what that was. And I got involved with Angel Vancouver Forum, which is an angel group out of Vancouver, and Vantech, which is out in Vancouver. Started going to pitch meetings and seeing that. And then other people I knew in the community were getting startups going would come to me and say, hey, do you want to get involved? Do you want to, a lot of times in growth advisory and startup advisory, because you've got the battle scars, you've been there and done that. And so that's kind of how that went. We had plans to return to Toronto. Just waited for our youngest son to finish his middle school. And so in 18, we made the jump and we moved back here. In the meantime, we'd also started another business, which is a sell-side M&A advisory business with some other former colleagues. So my partner in that business is in Vancouver and I'm out here in Toronto. And we're taking lower middle market traditional businesses to market and selling effectively baby boomer controlled private companies to the private equity and strategic buyers. So, I think I've got about 24 organizations that have been involved in or am involved in or in my track record. So it's all kind of just, it's not really work. It's just, I don't know, some people get up and they're the natural inclination to do a lot of physical sports activity. Other people, and it's just kind of who I am and what I do. As I say, I'm a deal junkie, and need my fix.
I love it. You're kind of just moving pieces around. You're making sure that things are going here and moving here to get this done and moving that. And I think that's a great way to keep active. And the angel world is very active. So there's lots of deal flow and lots of things going on there. So That's always great to participate in, but it's also great when you can bring in a lot of that experience to help out a lot of these young entrepreneurs. You First, I love the Netherlands. I'm a big fan. Been there a bunch of times. Um, Something that really kind of jumped out to me, and you mentioned it when you were at the beginning, when you were talking about uh, your business strength and where you took over this business and decided to jump in and risk all of it because really the only option was either I fail or I win, and if I win, I'm going to look good, so why not try for it? But there was one thing that stood out in it, and you mentioned it in a different format a couple of times, but it was people aligning to your vision and to your mission, which I'm going to say they're very similar. Maybe you can talk a little bit more about that, because I think in the world of entrepreneurship, this seems to be something that doesn't really get a lot of attention. And I think it also changes the culture of a business when those things are aligned. But it also, I think, drives a lot of energy and spirit amongst the people in the business when they have a vision or when they have this mission that they're going towards. And how do you help these startups actually get into that train of thought so that they can have a successful business because they have these things aligned?
Well, I think I've had some great mentors a lot of this is from experience and from mentors teaching me. So firstly, I'm not the architect or the first to come across this, but I've had some great mentors point this out to me. And when investors look for a founding team, why are we looking for a founding team? Well, you have to convince two other people besides yourself that this crazy idea might go. So there's a validation going on, but those three individuals often also have a lot of shared traits and values, and that's the beginning of the culture. The culture is simply how we do things around here, and often naturally there's natural qualities where you're different and where you overlap. And it's just different. It's not recognizing the differences and where you have the shared purpose, shared circumstance, but also where you are different, and seeing both of those as strengths. And then ultimately, as you start to, now most companies initially it's all about getting that product made, getting those first customers, but culture is happening whether you like it or not. Culture is like, the person that sees every problem as a challenge, or the person that sees every possible as an impossible task and has a long list of why we can't do that, versus in startups, it's all about find a way. The vision was we're going to sell this, but the buyers came for that. Throw this away. We're selling this now. That's pivoting, right? What do people want to buy from you? What do they value from you? That's part of the culture. Some people just they can't be in that environment. They need the steady Eddie, needs a steady pace, needs what the rules are, and often there aren't rules. So if we got to get a proposal done, JP, we're going to do it Saturday. We're going to do it Sunday. We're going to do it and we're going to get it done. We're going to, and that's what is part of that culture. And your culture is happening whether you like it or not. But as you start to get a little bigger, when the company doesn't fit around the kitchen table anymore, when the company starts to need a whole house, right? Then you start to have, as leaders, you start to have some introspective time to go, are there qualities or values that we need to intentionally foster? And we get to that too, because sometimes you're lacking certain values in your culture. And as leaders, you need to be self-aware, and then you start to intentionally foster culture values that you may not inherently because it's not all about the leader's personality or the two or three, but there's also differences that you may not possess, and those you've got to identify and go. One company I was involved in, we were all very what you would define as very compliant values. We were, compliant natures, people that you would define as very expert at things. And what experts do is they silo everything. You're the manufacturing, you're the development, you're the marketing, you're the sales, and leave me alone and I do my thing. And what's the weakness in that is collaboration. Experts don't like, because I just rely on your expertise and you rely on mine, and we both just expect everybody to do the right thing. And most of the time we do, but sometimes we don't. Right? So you need to foster collaboration.
Does this align into the, there's all these different methodologies on how you structure a team, especially early on. Like you said, you've got 2-3 people that are starting this business. So is this really something that you got to focus on over that pre-seed and seed round area where you're looking at the skills, you're looking at the accomplishments? And is that term like, what is it? Hire fast, fire, no, what is it? Fire quickly. There's some term that is.
Yeah, you want to hire slow and fire quick.
That's the one. So is that kind of a methodology that everybody should look at? Because it sounds like if you're building a culture, but it's building itself. So if you don't have the right people in that mix, your team's not going to be as successful. You're not going to be able to stick to that vision or that mission. So should you be looking at these types of formulas that will help you move forward quickly?
So yes and no. In early days, it's your business is like an infant. It needs a tremendous amount of attention, care, and attention, and it's just crying all the time for cash. That's what if you're wondering what a baby's doing, he's just crying for cash. That's your business. So you just got to nurture it. But eventually it starts to become a child. It becomes an adolescent, and at that point, it starts to have a personality, and it starts to talk back, right? And that's where value imprinting, you've already done it as leaders, right? So if you're not authentic as an individual, people already know, the team already knows. If you're not, if your word isn't, if what you promise, what you do, your actions don't match your language, people already know. Leadership demands always the most from the leader. Right, and that's why we talk about it's lonely at the top. So I would say, really self-awareness, so that don't set expectations that you yourself can't meet. Be authentic, be real. Really, that's people know we're going to make mistakes, but if you've built that, if you've got credibility, if you've been sincere throughout, and you can own up to your mistakes. People have a lot of time for sincere, honest individuals. Be forthright, own your mistakes, and because your business is going to have some bumps and bruises. But if you're respectful and you're always respectful, and you stop, all those things get tested when you can't make payroll. All those things get tested is when that big demo goes out terribly. All those things get tested in the early days of building that culture. And I've had the great fortune that sometimes when I meet people I've worked with, years ago, and you run into them and you just reminisce about those, remember when we were doing this and it almost didn't work and we thought for sure we lost it, but then it came through. Like, these are just, these are great war stories. And that comes because I've had the good fortune to work with a lot of great people, and collaborate and have some amazing colleagues along the way. So it's,
And I enjoy the comparison to that child personality and moving on to the youth and becoming an adult, your business that way. I think it is a good way for people to resonate that, you're going to start off and there's a lot of crying. There's a lot of trying to figure out what we all do and what we're trying to achieve. And as you start to grow, you start to learn with each other. The culture's growing, the vision's starting to come out, and you're starting to get that path and direction where you can all align and move forward. So then you're getting into your strategies, your crawl, walk, run, and all those good things. But I think those make a really big difference in your business for sure. Is when you start working with these startup companies and you're looking at making an investment or kind of diving into these companies, is there something that stands out to you the most that you really want to foster inside of this business? Is something that you're drawn to? Is it the product? Is it the team? Is it the financials? What is it that really has you driven into that business to want to help?
Probably the number one thing is coachability of the individuals. Was it Confucius? The teacher can teach when the student is ready to learn, and that, right? Or somebody has said to me, if there's room for your ideas, and you find that quick enough, if there is or not, right? Because often people will give you lip service, but they're, you see it quick enough. So, coachability is probably one of the most valuable things. Is if I'm there to be in any kind of mentor role. If I'm not in any kind of mentor role, well, then it's just purely clinical financial transaction. And we can go that way too, as long as be careful what you ask for. Just that kind of investor is much more challenging to partner with, because you as the founder, you set the terms, right?
No, for sure. And you're right. There is such a big difference between an investor that's coming in and building a relationship with you and growing within your business and helping you close a deal or helping you understand something a little bit differently, versus pushing you, driving you to hit these numbers, driving you to move forward. So you got to kind of decide what's going to be better for your business and at the time as well, because those are both warranted in any business. Getting the right push, reporting into somebody that's going to help you drive it, if that's on a board or whatever that might be. One of the things that and the reason why we're kind of talking about all this stuff is it's all around shaping this business and or shaping the startup. And one of the things that I was doing an interview yesterday, and the Matt, the gentleman I was interviewing, he said, there's no fast way to building a company. You build it in the same kind of sequence all the way through. And I think that that's a great way of looking at it. Because it is correct. You can't just go from crawling to running at high speed and not have any road bumps or any miss that occurs, that are things that occur during that. But in that process where you're trying to organize your business and really understand what you're trying to achieve and where you're trying to go, there's one thing that always stands out, which is, how do I make myself investable? And how do I get myself ready for where somebody sees value in my company? And then they start to go out and talk to angels. And one thing that I really liked about something that you had done, and I wanted to see how that transitioned into where you're helping these companies look for funding, was that you went and took a course to become board certified. So I'd love to learn a little bit more about that process, because I think that's actually quite clever, because you're learning this whole, a lot of people take these board seats, but I don't think there's a lot of knowledge of how they actually work, or what's the premise behind them, and what value that actually comes back to the business, and how you actually steer a company to be able to keep raising and keep going in the right direction and not fail. So maybe you can share a little bit about that and how it really helps in your drive of getting these companies further along in their business.
So I think what you're referring to is the Institute of Corporate Directors, which is a U of T and Simon Fraser University and Lovell universities. So more and more in the public company space, they're looking for expert directors, and so the ICD.D designation acknowledges that. It's a year-long program, and really you're what is corporate governance, and you're taught what your role as a director is, your fiduciary responsibility, your duty of care, and it really applies great to public companies and in the large board space. Everything you learn there, obviously, anything you learn anywhere, you can apply somewhere else sometimes too. Typically with startups, I wouldn't recommend taking board seats in startups. Often you're taking more personal liability than than upside. But board advisory roles can accomplish, can give the management team the benefit of that sage advice, and it can give advisors and mentors a way to be helpful without having to take the potential liability that may come with being a director. And there's, you know, with after Enron, the role of the director substantially changed. Internal controls and the role of the audit function and segregation of duty substantially changed, and it's become a lot more riskier to become a corporate director. So as part of our exit or our transition strategy in our life was happening, I thought this would become an area of my life. So that's why I think in 15 or 16 is when I took that program. And so it's been you know, it allows you to have those kinds of conversations at an early stage, but it's not usually a big part of the startup. The big part in the startup world is customer validation, increasing. Where do I get my finding cash and customer validation? I've looked at so many decks. If you're sending a deck to me, before you tell me the problem, I want to know if you got traction. Like if you got traction, that tells me somebody wants to buy what you're selling. Then, you know, like to me, so many decks you get, there's no traction. And I'm talking not fake traction, real traction, right? People are giving up their hard-earned money to you, right? So, and that's often I find what makes companies less investable. It really, the best way to position your company for it to be investable is raising capital from customers through a thing called sales. There's no, you give up no equity and delight your customers, and to the point that they're willing to pay for the problem you solve for them. And you are the best. You do that enough times, investors will come looking for you. I mean, it's hard. So some people think, oh, it's going to be easier to go to investors than customers.
Well, you're 100% correct on that. I'm a big fan of the sales perspective that, you know, with sales and it creates validation. With validation creates interest, and then that kind of will stem and move forward from there. And anything that, again, the same forum that we work with, it's if you build something that's great, people will chase you to give you money. Might take you some time to get there, so you're going to have to kind of feed it through the system. But eventually people will want to get on board because they see the value. You've created a validation. And what I loved about what you're saying on that corporate governance side is that there is a point in time where companies also need that governance and they need that help. Myself, not as, I don't take very many board seats at all, but recently have, because we've had some companies that have really escalated in growth. And they put that together just for the same reason that you talked about, which is governance and being able to ensure that they're moving down that path. And I think having that knowledge and understanding of how governance can work inside of a fintech or inside of a business that is fast moving at the time is really beneficial because they've got the validation, but they're moving at a very quick pace. And I think sometimes we tend to want to know everything, but long and behold, there are areas of expertise that we may not carry, and those things do have to come into a business to kind of validate it even further and help on that growth side, especially if you're going for larger investments. So I can see how that education and knowledge that you've garnered would carry very well as these companies that you work with mature and start to go bigger and need that kind of governance and support. There was A few other things that you mentioned earlier on, and through some of the material that I've read and watched that you've done, and you've highlighted this a few times, which I think is it seems to be part of your kind of your mantra, which is coaching and advising and mentoring. Can you talk a little bit more about how and why more investors should look at this as being part of their drive to help companies?
Um, I guess I started doing it in the 80s. Again, child of immigrants, and in the 1980s, I was the early young adult. And at that point, there was a tremendous amount of people from South America and from Southeast Asia migrating to Canada. And I was able to get involved in the Immigrant Services Society and help place a lot of newcomers to Canada, which really was for me giving back. When we came to Canada, friends, neighbors, people at church helped our family out with little, not we, when we came reasonably, we weren't refugees, but little things like, how to open a bank account, how to enroll your kids in school, and how, everything's different in a new country, all this kind of stuff. So that's where I kind of started in that role. And then in my business career, again, getting into leadership roles early on in my life, that is really the most valuable thing that your team and people in first time management of people positions are looking for is coaching and mentoring. You're already technically competent. You've proven that. What you now need help with is the people side of the business, and that's often, that really is the role is to help them become more effective leaders, and become more successful, and their teams become more successful. So it's been again, it just comes in scaling your business as you get multiple teams and leaders to each team, and each of those leaders needs to be aligned. And if you get leaders of leaders, that's another level of complexity, where that's a whole new challenge for an individual. How do I get results as an individual? Then how do I get results with and through people? Then how do I get results with and through people who are themselves having to get results with and through people? Like, this is, a lot of fun to see people excel at that.
And how does someone go about finding a mentor, like even like yourself? They look for like-minded skills. They look for opposite skills. Like, I'm a marketer, but I don't know tech, so I should find a tech mentor. Like, how does someone really go about finding a fit so that they can learn? Is it offsetting skills, or is it to enhance the skill you have?
It all depends on what your purpose is, what your goal is as an individual looking for a mentor. I'm pretty up front about it. I advertise it. I've been doing it. I've been active through the university campuses, mentoring MBA students, entrepreneur programs when we're out in West. Done some activity here with the University of Toronto now, through the angel community, through, I think it's called TRIEC in Toronto Regional Immigrant Group. I'm on LinkedIn. To me, the one thing no one will ever say that they've reached out to me for mentoring that they didn't get, they were never ghosted. It's just, if I can't help you, maybe I can help send you to someone who can, or introduce you somewhere.
Which is great. It's a good way to kind of help everybody move them in the right position, right? You can't mentor everybody, but you can find a good fit.
Oh, and that's I think if we talk about revitalizing the economy after this recent economic downturn we've experienced this year, and it starts. It's not just financial capital, and that's what's the reason. What's the name of our holding company is Cerebral Capital. We think that's the most valuable capital, because that's really the capital everybody starts out with. We all start out with some amount of cerebral capital, and now how do we grow that? We grow that through learning, self-learning, education, awareness, and that's what in 2002 when we formed that that business, we thought, well, what do we really start with? Well, we showed up, we had some privilege to the family we were born into. However, at some point in your life, it's your wits, it's your smarts, it's your business savvy, right? Because there's some people who are given a tremendous amount of opportunity, but they're completely unprepared, and it's opportunity wasted. And other people are extremely prepared, and when they meet opportunity, it's just magnified, right? So
it almost sounds like there's a good opportunity for most people to really be able to give back by offering mentoring and coaching based on the experience they've had. And it can be very specific just to marketing or just to operations, but there's a lot that they can give back if they just took a few minutes to figure out, how can I actually give a hand to an early stage company, or how can I help guide somebody through a problem that they're having, because I may have faced it, or I just rather enjoy listening to these problems and seeing if I can offer some guidance through that process.
yeah, and I found my whole life approaching people older than me, and because now I'm a person of a certain age, that everybody is willing to, if you ask, people are willing to give you their opinion. And the nice thing about medicine, it doesn't always taste good, but it's often good for you. But don't worry about the vessel in which the advice comes. Take the medicine. Sometimes you can, there's not a fit between you and the mentor, but that's okay. There's others, but there's always something to be learned.
Agreed. Yep. I found that sometimes we have a tough time listening, and I've realized that listening, it's this piece where everybody thinks that you're supposed to just sit back and listen to everybody talk, or just take everything in, which again, you should. It's great to listen. But I think sometimes we forget what we're trying to listen for. And there's a lot of signs or signals that come through conversation, come through one-on-one, through mentoring. And I think sometimes we listen and maybe we might hear it twice and we think we should action it. And I think a lot of times people don't go with their gut, or they don't listen to those second times it brought up, or maybe it's even once it was brought up. And I find that, it can open your mind. An example I had, I was walking through our fund at Whole Foods about a year ago. No, just in January. And there was an Asian gentleman sitting beside us, and he was listening to the pitch the whole time. And he, at the end, when the gentleman left, he came up to me and he said, "So you're selling this, you're doing this, you're doing that." And I was like, "Oh yeah, hey, nice to meet you." And he went right on telling me everything. And then at the end of the conversation, after he regurgitated everything that I had said for about 3 minutes, he said, "You own a car?" I was like, "Yeah." "What kind of car?" And I was like, "What?" And because I didn't know who this guy was, I was afraid to kind of share it. But he was like, "Do you own a house? Do you invest in stock?" And he was just drilling me. And he goes, "If I'm going to buy into you, you need to tell that guy. That's what you didn't tell him. You need to tell him everything that you have. And that's what's going to go, because I'm not investing in anybody that doesn't have all those things." Mm-hmm. And I said, "All right, no, that's fair enough." And I drove home. It was went a little on and on about that, but I drove home and I thought about it. And I said, that was some really good advice, because when you're talking about something, you maybe aren't selling yourself the way that you need to. And sometimes you got to share a little bit to give a little bit, and et cetera, to take a little. So I think sometimes in coaching and mentoring, we kind of do the lip service of it, but I think you really got to listen to the underlying words of what's being shared. And it doesn't matter where they're coming from, like you mentioned, different vessels or different ways to achieve it. But sometimes there's some hidden messages that you kind of got to look at, because everybody brings a little bit of value if you're open-minded to hearing it.
That's the introspective side of the leader. I'm one of my mentors. Whenever he would come to me with his good advice, I'd argue with him till like eventually he was like, "Okay, I got to go home now," and disagree with him and argue and disagree, and then he finally said to me, he goes, "The difference is you will argue your position so long that people finally give up." And he goes, "But the next day you've thought about everything." And then he said, and then you would come into me the next day and go, "Okay, yeah, we'll do it your way," but at that time you get caught up in the battle, And part of, being an entrepreneur is being passionate about what you believe in, and that means you got to hold on to it. And it's like going to see a customer and they don't get the value of your product. You're going to keep on convincing them until you're convinced them, right? Because that's your role. However, he said, you would never drop it. You would never let it go. He goes, but then the next morning, I could tell you thought about it all night, because then you come in and go, yeah, okay, you're right. I was wrong about this, and that's, and what have you. And that's, so I've had a lot of very patient mentors with me.
It helps you learn and grow, right? And just think that I'm sure that the next time that occurred and that customer said, I'm not interested, you stopped and asked the question, what am I missing here? How can I help you? And maybe that's where you got that learning, and that helped you get that customer more in tune with you, and you became, you built a relationship from it. So I think, like anything, it takes time learning, and hey, we're not going to catch everything the first time, but they won't get by me the second time, because we're going to be quick enough to catch it, right?
Yeah, no, it's, but it is, I know a lot of companies are looking for money, but often the free ideas that a good advisory board can give you, or the introductions they can make, or the network they can open you up to, is more valuable than the investment that you may get from them, right?
Yep.
Like $100,000 of equity is or the introduction to the multi-million-dollar customer, right? Which is more valuable? Well, we all know which is more valuable, but we forget that often in our, because we get myopic, right? Where I'm the CEO, I'm in the capital raising, that's my job. But if the right advisors can help you position your company with beta customers or trial customers, or open up, it's taken those mentors decades to develop those networks and that reputation. And when they're willing to introduce you, the social proof that they bring, it's like, you've compressed sales cycles for people.
Agreed.
Right. Or on supplier negotiations, they can introduce you to often suppliers. You're dealing with somebody, but you don't know that this individual is actually a middleman. And somebody in your network who's got 10, 20, 30 years of having done this, well, yeah, okay, but I actually know the source over here. We can go straight to the source and improve your cost structure. So there's, right, or attracting talent. The mentor in his Rolodex is like the old version of LinkedIn, and has that network. They can help you round out your founding team. And again, they're vetted. No one's going to bring forward somebody who they wouldn't feel highly confident working with themselves. So there's a tremendous amount of value in, I think, in the angel investor community that is often not tapped by early stage startups. That is often, I think, much more valuable than the money that they're out to raise.
100%. I wholeheartedly agree with that. I believe that there's a lot of knowledge, and if you don't ask questions, you're not going to find it. And I think if the message is here that we get to share after today to the startup is ask questions, like learn to open up, share, find the right people to bounce ideas off of, test people, throw something at them and see what comes back. Build some loyalties, but find some experience that's going to help you build forward. So I think we've gone through this nice, great journey from kind of where you've come from, and sharing ways to work inside a business, building passion, building a mission, having visions, getting coaching. I think there's a huge amount of value there that you guys are, and yourself and your business are really bringing into those startups and getting them ready for investment. So I think the environment and the ecosystem are obviously thanking you for that, and taking all those years of experience that you've brought in. So we're going to kind of transition now into our rapid fire questions. So we have a few of those, and then we've got maybe 2 or 3 quick questions that we're going to ask. But we're almost there, but so far it's been awesome. So rapid fire. First question, what is your favorite part of investing?
It's the potential, seeing what could be the potential of the seed of something new, right? The possibility that and the positive customer outcomes that we might achieve through this venture.
I love it. How many companies do you invest in per year?
It's not a specific number. Since 2002, we've been involved in about 24, sometimes more, sometimes less. But it's not really about, we must do X number this year.
There's no quota, which is good.
Yeah, no, I got on one boss, and we're more concerned about really not the number of companies, but it's really about finding impactful opportunities where we can add value.
I like it. Impact and value. Is there a vertical that you like to focus on, or set of verticals?
So yeah, my whole career has been in the application of technology to the financial sector. So financial innovation in what's now, I guess nowadays this is all called, now it's called fintech, or cred tech, or reg tech, or insure tech. But all of that was just simply the application of digital technologies to traditional financial processes. That's where I've got deep domain expertise.
Perfect. Any due diligence requirements that you try to make sure that you bake in before you make any investment?
Nothing that isn't really best practice for any other investor. Nothing unusual.
Timelines for investment?
Buy and hold, really, for as long as we can get enterprise value to grow, and as long as we see continued growth, and as long as that growth continues to be at a return on capital that is better than we could get elsewhere.
Okay.
Because what's the point? I mean, it's like the stock market. Why sell that stock if you've got nowhere else to put it? So it's kind of a bit of a Warren Buffett strategy applied to what we do. Not that we're anywhere near that level, but
I like it. It's good. Do you guys lead rounds?
We have, but not always. Yep.
Okay. Any preferred terms? Pref shares, common, safes?
Convertible, pref shares, or common. Really, it's about alignment with the founders. Whatever aligns best with the founders and in the opportunity.
Okay. Do you do follow-on investments or take board seats?
We have, well, yes, we do, and yes, we have, but not always. These are not. Every situation is independent of each previous situation.
Okay. Any notable companies that you want to share that you're really excited about?
Well, I think I'm pretty proud of what a lot of the companies we're involved in have done since March. The pivoting, and in some ways, it's really helped them get clarity around their value proposition and what their noble purpose is. Because they are, we just had some great news today. One of our companies, Video Link, I just got the email, but they have, if you think about bloggers, you write your article and then you share it. Video Link, you create your video, and we could put today's video out on 25 different video platforms at the same time. And it's being used by broadcasters, and it's used by, for example, the religious community is using it for their members who can't go to church, temple, or mosque. So there's and it's being used by the political community, government. It's being used by all sorts of forms of government, where people can access government, whether it's city government or federal government. Video link, they were used in the recent events in the US during the US election. I think we got 22,000 participants on a stream, including the current, I guess, what do you call him? Donald Trump was on and fighting for his his position, and all the lawyers were on this platform. So I just got the email from them. We're excited. It's really made, like, you know, the celebrity, the acting and entertainment industry is really shut down. These tools allow musicians to broadcast from home. If you've got a cell phone, you can, using our app, you can broadcast to up to 25 platforms at once. So you can grow your home audience. Very excited about that. One of the other companies is a company actually out at, we have a development shop in Pakistan as well. And they are offering their restaurant app. So it allows any independent restaurant to have all the power of a big chain, and their app's free. It's been free since COVID time, really trying to grow their base. So that's, you know, we had a, you know, so it's not just they're validating their business and their model, but they're also being very responsible about it. And they're being very, what I would say, quote unquote, Canadian about it. They're very charitable about it. They're not, you know, yes, they're getting product validation, but they're not being taking advantage. They're taking advantage to get product validation. They're not taking advantage to. So if you're in a restaurant business and you can't make ends meet right now because the intermediaries take most of the fees, this allows you to be completely independent. You can do have your menu, have your website, have your deliveries, have your pickup, and all of that from an app for free. So we're excited about that. So that video link is the one I talked about. The other one is Unmile. If they go to our site on the portfolio page, we got links to all of them. Another company out of New Westminster, that is father and son duo, have completely digitized supply chain. So traditionally physical supply chain was a hassle. Emails, in-person meetings, samples, shipping back and forth. They've completely digitized this. So it's a total quality management system. It connects it's reputation management. So in your, you know, a lot of companies, if you're industrial designer and engineer, who you can upload your drawings, and you can completely see every manufacturer in the process. So it's ISO certified, processed, but also from a reputation management, you don't want to find out that child labor was used or in some way in the manufacture of your process. This it makes the whole thing more efficient, transparent, and more costly. You know, so there's a number of these tools that have really, you can see it like in e-commerce, right? E-commerce went from what, 20% market penetration in February to almost 40% penetration 6 months later. I think a lot of startups with digital solutions have had accelerated growth because they were able to, the need was more than ever for what they provided. And you know, the platform we're using today is probably the best example of that, right? Everybody used video chat, everybody had video platforms, but I mean, it's been around for more than a decade. But Zoom just gave a better user experience at a time when it, you know, couldn't have been better, and it's become a verb, right?
That is so true. That is so true. But they sound like three great companies, and looking forward to learning more about them. So there's the last question that we'll dive into just quickly is, in all the experience you've had and all the things that you've been doing in this startup world, is there a heartfelt story of a startup that just blew your mind away, that they went from almost failure to just taking off, or something that just really caught your attention that you really thought, man, these guys really made a great job, or she was fantastic at how she overcame this barrier? Anything like that that stands out? The community loves these little war stories that are just really give you that juice to keep going.
Well, yeah, so this is a husband and wife team. I met them in 2017 in Vancouver on Commercial Drive at a coffee shop, and they had this grand vision for their business. They were both what I would say knew way, way, way more about coffee than I ever thought you could know about coffee. They really wanted to change that industry. They would travel to Colombia, buy the coffee direct from the farmer, which is has all sorts of positive consequences on farming in Colombia, because there's a competitive forces there where there's other things you could be growing that can make a lot more money for your family, but maybe not so good for society. And so they import the coffee. They started roasting the coffee, and again, initially they got some bandwidth in somebody else's facility. They were delivering, their product was delivered. It was a unique coffee. It's won all kinds of awards, and they were delivering it through the boutique cafes across the world. But it was a startup, and we it's week to week cash, but we really paid attention to our cash, and we had this fledgling little direct to consumer following happening. March hits, and they're just good people. Some of the cafes returned the coffee and asked for refunds, and before they checked with me, they gave them refunds. Now I'm not at all an owner in this business. This is a company I work with through Futurepreneur, so cash can be tight, and you put but I mean, that's just good people that they are. July, and they moved to a subscription model, so you can now have the coffee direct to your home. July, they booked $60,000.
Awesome.
From you take the annual, and it's an annual recurring. You take that's a monthly recurring revenue stream, right? So they have their own vehicles now. They have their own plant. They have their own roasting equipment. All of that's off of Bootstrap, and that's so it isn't always software and hardware.
Agreed.
Right? Right. So that's an interesting company. Yeah. So go to Hello Luna Coffee, and go to their website. It's just a cute little thing. It just makes you feel good when you go to the website. They're great people to deal with. It's very personable. They have an Instagram account, and if have subscription coffee.
I love it.
Why not? You have subscription wine, you have subscription Dollar Shave Club, you've got all kinds of other subscriptions, and you're doing something good for the independent farmers in South America.
Agreed. No, I love the process. I love how they did that, and I like the hustle. I like all the things that they've done. That sounds amazing. So a great story. So now we're going to get into something real quick, which is personal. And I learned this through a podcast, the company that we were working with. And I thought, you know what? These podcasts are great. They're super businessy. I'm learning lots. The environment's learning lots. But I got to get something that makes this a little bit more personal. So the first one, which is I'm taking back from the beginning, which was the one thing about you that nobody would know. So we'll jump on that one, and then I'll go through the next three.
I wish I've been trying to think about that since I knew that question was coming. And I honestly have a hard time actually answering it, because I'm, as my wife says, you're too much of a sharer. I have a hard time coming up with something that I wouldn't have shared with someone already. I'm not good at keeping secrets about myself. So
All right. Well, that's all right. Well, then we can
Yeah.
skip on to the next one. That means it's you've got out there. I like doing it because I create it as a unique identifier.
Oh,
So
cool. That's cool.
that way people, because I don't remember names very well, and I always remember details and facts. So it's numbers, and I'm sure I'm not going to call you investor number 65, so that doesn't work. So I have to come up with something else that identifies.
Yeah.
And
No, I get it. Yeah.
so, and I do the same thing with students because I won't remember his name, but I always remember the kid that told me that he's Chinese. He looks like he's Vietnamese, but he's actually Chinese. So I'll remember that kid forever because that was quite clever and funny. So, there's the next question is, what's your favorite sports team?
It's my son's U16 soccer team.
I like it.
Here in Etobicoke.
All right.
This whole season they haven't been able to play, but they've been practicing when it was winter out. They were been practicing in the summer. They are ready for anybody, but just waiting for a game. But love the energy and love the enthusiasm, love the purity and the innocence of the boys, and just they're all, they're getting, usually at this age, a lot of the soccer really kind of reduces, and there's less and less players, and becoming a teenager, and got other interests, and it's obviously the best players and the really good players, and they got a great coach and great manager. So that's my favorite sports team.
I love it. I actually 4 years ago I went and got recertified as a coach, and I did coach the U-Boys 16 soccer team for 2 years, and fantastic experience. It was the Bad News Bears. Like, the team wasn't the most equipped, best players, but by the end of the year, man, were we singing, winning games and everything. So it was a lot of fun. So I totally hear where you're coming from.
Now, I've been going to every single practice, sitting there, whatever, in my car, because you're not allowed to go out to the practice. We've had no games. Just, they're ready. They're ready. They're trained up. They're ready. They're waiting.
Yep, sounds like it. Yeah.
Yeah.
The pent up, spend all your time practicing one damn game. I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you. Okay, so the next question's 2 parts. What's your favorite movie, and what character would you play in the movie?
I probably would say the first Godfather movie.
Ooh.
That's the first one, not the.
Okay. And which character?
And I found because I found the character of Michael Corleone really, in that first movie, he wasn't the bad guy. He was just a dutiful son who they had a very different plan. He had a very different plan, and they had a very different plan for him, but things changed in the family business, so to speak. And he made a very different, pivot in his life. I found that sense of duty and the stoicism of that character, I found that very appealing.
Yeah, I like that. I'm actually
something that I'm not sure if I don't think I'd be up for that, but.
I know, but you know what? I've been throwing these in, and I'm getting a lot of great movies from like the 50s, and just movies I never would have thought. And then the reference point, which I really like, is that when you deep dive into it, you can see that the similarities of the character and the person you're talking with, how much they actually resonate, like the calmness, the articulation, the way that you strategize, and it really does work. My favorite one was a gentleman out of the US. He just was like, I'm Star Wars, Yoda. And I was like, that's amazing. I thought you'd be more of, and I thought, man, like, you're a Lando. Like, my head just went to Lando right away. And he's like, nope, Yoda. And I was like, I can see that. Yep, super calm, thinking about it. But he was so much energy. So I was like, Lando's got more energy than Yoda. But I just thought it was great. So it's been a really fun question. So I got a few movies that I've got to line up. Now I've got a series of Godfather movies I'm going to have to watch. So,
but it's the first one, the original one. Whenever they do a 2 and a 3 of anything,
Yeah,
you can tell the writer never planned that, right?
that's true. That's true. But you still got to watch them. So
Yeah.
got to go through them all. Well, Karl, it's been a pleasure. It's been awesome to learn about everything that you've talked about. I got lots of notes. I'm a note junkie, so I like to write down all the quotes and lines and everything. That was great. Half the time you can't read it because I'm trying to write as fast as I can while concentrating on what we're talking about. But again, I appreciate you sharing and everything that you've brought to the table here. It's been phenomenal. And the way we like to end our show is that I want to leave you with the last word. So anything you want to share to the entrepreneur world or anything you want to share to investors, I turn it over to you and leave you with that last word.
Yeah, I've been hearing a lot that people are putting off their startups because of the world events. There is not a better time on the planet to start a business than at the now. Look at all the great companies that came out of 08, 09. Look at all the great companies that came out of 2000 and 2001. The most valuable company on the planet today was worth $2.5 million in 1995, right? When they were public, when the NASDAQ crashed in 2000 and thought, and so, don't put off what you're doing. The angel investing community, the startup community is alive and well. There is more capital available now than ever. And you just need to, get ready to be able to articulate the value prop. And there are more businesses willing to buy solutions to problems that in the past they may not have gotten around to, because this environment has created an urgency to solve those problems. We've seen some great companies over the summer. Everything from the better ways to build ventilators to how to identify people who may have symptoms, and every one of these. This is the time. This should be the catalyst to start. Don't delay. If you've got solutions, people want to hear them. People want to support them. Customers want to pay for them. So don't put it off any longer. If you're waiting for a sign to start your company, okay, Jeff and I are giving you that sign right now.
I love it. I love it. Yes, the green light is on. Go for it. Don't hold back. Brilliant.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I love it. Thank you very much again, Karl. Brilliant. Enjoyed the conversation. Hope we get to do it again.
A lot of fun. Looking forward to it. All
right. That was fantastic. Karl was always great. Fantastic. I love the idea of how he went through for the board of certifications. I really love that we really talked heavily about the whole concept of how the business functions and operates and how you build that culture, build that vision, get a mission, drive it. Everybody comes together. And it starts right at the beginning, something small, and works your way up. Great background with his parents coming in from the Netherlands, being entrepreneurs, him going out and attacking the world and then coming back and doing the same thing and going after the entrepreneurial side. Great investor, does a lot of great things in the community. It's been a pleasure working with him. So check it out. Anything we can help with. Thanks, Karl. Enjoy the interview.